Well, hey, I'm Roger with Roger Farina with Citizen Media News. We are here with Peter Ticktin. I'm really happy to get the chance to speak with you. I met Peter a couple of years ago at AmFest at Doral. And Peter is a lawyer, and he's got an interesting story to tell. Hello, Peter.
Hi, how you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Um, Peter happened to be the roommate of Donald Trump at the New York Military Academy back in probably before I was born in 1963, right?
Well, yes, that year, 63, 64, we were together. Although we both were there for years before that.
Personally, we were just talking. I was telling you that, I have a connection because I'm retired military. I worked for a brief period of time at West Point, which is just over the ridge line there up in upstate New York. And it's a fantastic story. And what are your earliest recollections of being with Donald? I know you were on the soccer team. I got your book here. We've been reading your book, Peter, What Makes Trump Tick, which is a great play on your last name. What makes Trump tick? Ticktin. Yeah, that's fun. So
yes, it seems to work. It makes people it helps them to remember the name so they can go to Amazon and order a copy. But you're asking.
Yeah, what's your earliest remember? Like, in the book you talk about being on the soccer team, and he picked you first to be in Company A.
Yeah, I was on the soccer team, and I was really the worst player on the team, so I ended up being the manager. But he was a good athlete, Donald, especially when it came to baseball. He was the pitcher and ended up as the captain of the team in our senior year. As far as soccer was concerned, he just played that 1 year. But then, he was one of these just decent, nice guys, that you get to know. But he was more than that, because he would inject himself into certain things. With somebody would be having a problem, that this one fellow that I got to know in recent years. He just recently passed away, but Dr. Platt, I think is his name. But anyway, he told me how he owed his whole success and everything to Donald, because he was a small guy and he didn't really belong in the main barracks. He belonged kind of in the middle school aspect barracks. And Donald saw what a hard time he was having, and he put it upon himself to go to the administration and make sure that he got transferred to some place where his life wasn't going to be as miserable as it was. The guy, he was just a little kid, as I said, a smaller guy than most. He was from Peru, who also was of Jewish background. And so he was getting some not so good treatments in those days. And Donald got it all fixed, and nobody asked him to.
I know at the end of your book, you have a dedication to Colonel Tobias. What was that relationship like?
Well, Major Tobias.
Okay.
Major Tobias is, that name to us was like, it could have been Major Brick Wall, because if you ran into him, you were running into a brick wall. If you did something out of line. And that was the man that was really the one that dealt with Donald. So Donald came to the school as a bit of a, what you might call a wiseacre, a wise guy type of guy. I don't mean mob type of wise guy, just wise guy.
Well, he's from he's from Queens. What do you expect? Hey.
Well, he was a little bit worse than a lot of the guys from Queens. He was, nobody could tell him what to do. But he learned pretty quickly that you either go by the main system or you suffer the penalties. And it wasn't an easy life. New York Military Academy in those days, we come from a different world. I don't know that you can even imagine what it was like being in a car and you hear air raid sirens. It was after World War II, but each of us were born within a year of the war. And so for many years.
At the early parts of Vietnam, right?
I'm sorry?
It was during the early parts of Vietnam, right? 63?
No. Vietnam came later. We were born the year following the end of the Second World War.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Right.
We were both born in 1946. And the war ended in 45, and the Korea War didn't start till after that. So there was no war really going on at the time that we came into this world. And for many years after that, the air raid sirens would go off. And if you were in school, everyone got under their desks, pointed away from the windows so that the glass wouldn't shoot through your eyelids and so on. I mean, this is the way we're brought up. It was a serious time. And it wasn't as though we had objectors and conscientious objectors and people who didn't want to go along with the way things were. They went along with it because everybody went along with it. There was no dissent. You know, the air raid sirens blew, you knew what you had to do. If you're in a car with your parents, the car had to be stopped. It pulled alongside the whatever street it's on, it just pulls to the side and it stops and everybody in the car gets down and the little kids get under the dashboard of the car. It was a different kind of world. It was a scarier world in a way, this way. And it was also a world where there was a common expression, to spare the rod is to spoil the child. So it wasn't like today, you know, where you come in last in a race and gosh, you better get a trophy too.
Here's your trophy.
You wouldn't want to hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a different world. It was a world where you had to measure up because there was no tolerance to the fact that you just weren't feeling up to things or whatever. You had to do what you had to do. And then even while we were teenagers and in New York Military Academy, for instance, I mean, there was a time when we were in American history class and Donald was in the row ahead of me. Our biggest class had 12 students, so excellent. We had incredible teachers, very small classes. And the people that were admitted to our school were admitted on the basis of IQ tests, and 1 out of 7 were admitted. So, you know, so I can tell you, Donald's a smart guy because everyone that went there had to show their level of intelligence, and then he was an honor student. But I was saying that even when we were in American history class, you know, a kid comes into the classroom, lets us know, one of the cadets, that President Kennedy's been shot. Different kind of world. The year before that, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. And even though right now, as we speak, you know, there's a possibility that Russia could go berserk and send missiles over here, nobody's really worried about it. Nobody's thinking, looking up at the sky, hoping not to see a missile coming down. And nobody's afraid. But when in 1962, when the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred, people were afraid. And it was just a different kind of situation. It was one where the world was more united. The American people were more united. And even for many decades after that, we still all watch the same television programs. So you go to work or you go to school and everybody's talking about, did you see what they did in this? And did you see what they did in that? Sort of like now, even still, you know, you still have a large percentage of the population that watches, let's say, the Super Bowl. But imagine if every night people are watching the same kind of thing. Saturday night, it was this, or Sunday night, it was the Ed Sullivan Show. Did you see the Beatles? And everybody was on the same track. Now we're so fragmented, not just on what people see on TV.
And back then there was only 3 major TV channels too.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And in black and white, you know.
Yeah.
Until color started coming in about our senior year of high school. But it was a different kind of a world back then. And that's the world that we were part of, which was a serious one. As I say, things are different now by far, because now it's not just TV, it's whatever's on your iPhone that can basically be there to distract you or entertain you or teach you. So, you know, yes, so I know Donald Trump for a long time. And I'm a fan. I have to tell you something, that he was a good guy then and he's a good guy now.
Well, the dynamic about, you know, having been military myself, and I think folks that are in the military know this, is that, and I think this is kind of what you were alluding to, is like, whenever you go to a school in the military, you know, it was like, you're the class that was the last one that was really, really hard. You know, it was really hard when I went to school, you know, and, you know, I can imagine going to a military academy in the 1960s was as as challenging as it is. There's no such thing as oh, here's my stress card. Oh no, I got to take a time out now, please. And so I imagine that it was really, it was very hard. So
There were no safe zones, and it wasn't as though we went to school and then went home after. No,
No.
after your classes, you went to the barracks, where you either got along with the people around you or you didn't get along with the people around you. In your first year, you were
did you have to
scum
do
of the earth.
in Warnow school? We called it cubing, where you had to roll your socks in this much and your t-shirt. Did you guys have to do all that stuff?
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah. And in our lockers, my toothbrush had to be direct on my shelf, directly above my roommate's toothbrush on his shelf, and so on. Yeah, everything was absolutely controlled and
Right.
and had to be totally neat and tidy, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, of course, we had daily inspections,
Yeah.
except on Sundays. And Saturday's inspections were white glove inspections, where the officer that would come around inspecting would wear white gloves and feel across on the top of your door frame or door casing, or feel above your locker. And God help you if his white gloves got dirty from dust.
Oh yeah. Flashbacks here, there, Peter. Oh,
I remember the brasso that you had to use
Oh, yeah.
for the brass that you had to wear on top of white webbing.
Well,
And
what
the
we
brasso,
figured
of course, turns black. Yeah.
figured out is if you took a little piece of cotton or the brasso and stuff, and you kind of taped it to the inside of a washing machine, and you put the washing machine on spin, you take your brass and just spin it that way. It was a good, make it clean and polish really quickly, So,
Well, we didn't have washing machines.
oh, okay. Well, we had that, Hey, we were the last class in Warnow school. It was really hard, So, what's a funny story? Like, tell me a funny story, like especially out of the book. Like, what's one of your favorite funny stories out of your book?
Well, we had new guy rules when you start off, and I don't know. I could just tell you a story. I'll just rather than expect a great knee slapper or something. I don't want you to think in terms of that. It's kind of like one of the things that happened. So I had these two people that ran my company. Bill Clayton was our captain, and Bill Jersey was our executive lieutenant. They were the two jocks of the school. So you have, Bill Clayton was the captain of the soccer team, wrestling team, and lacrosse team. And Bill Jersey was the captain of the football team, basketball team, and baseball team. So we had these two big guys that were, fast and nasty guys. They had us all scared to death. And, I was new to the school. I didn't know how things worked. We did have tables where we had waiters that would, wait on us. We had assigned seats in the mess hall. And new guys sat towards the middle of the sides where the captain, I was at the captain's table. And so the first time that a bottle of ketchup was taken away, the waiter left. It was empty and replaced, but the waiter left the cap there. So I asked Bill Clayton, Captain Clayton, what do I do with the cap? Stupid question, I guess. Turned out to be a really stupid question. So, with these new guy rules that we were on, if somebody walks by you in the hall, you have to slam your body up against that wall. Bang! Right?
Brace. We called it bracing.
And brace. Absolutely. Put your chin right back. And you say, sorry to be in your way, sir. And the rules were actually printed out. New guys are not allowed to wear caps indoors. New guys are the scum of the earth. New guys this, new guys that. So anyway, I asked him, in this mess hall, I asked, what do I do with this? And he told me, he said, I want you to shove it up your
right.
Your
Third point of contact.
Word. Yeah, he said, I want you to shove it up your, what you call it. And then he said, in fact, I want you to come to my room at 7:30, drop your trousers. I want you to bend over and I want to see that that's in there. So of course I didn't do that exactly. So I came to his room and I had the cap in my hand and I said, you know, sir, do I really have to shove this up my what? And he looked at me and he smiled. He said, no, you don't really have to do that. And I said, that's a good thing, sir, because new guys are not allowed to wear caps indoors. And he had no sense of humor at all. So he proceeded to, with a few others, to give me what we call a shot, 10 shots in a row, in fact. And a shot is when somebody takes a broomstick, swings around the room, and while somebody else is holding your head under his arm and your backside is sticking up there, and they whack you. They used to have paddles in fraternities in college for that kind of thing, and they use broomsticks in the barracks. If the broomstick broke, that was really those didn't hurt as much. Anyway, but that was something, I mean, that there was this sense of humor and there was this sense of torture, and people were afraid. Somehow what happens is over time, you lose your fear and you learn to stand up to these people. And that's what I ended up doing. And that's what Donald Trump ended up doing. You learn to operate within the rules. So you're not actually, fighting the establishment, you're working with it. But at the same time, you learn to stand up to these people.
Right. But the thing that you did was, like, you knew you weren't going to take the cap and put it where the guy wanted it. But the fact that you showed up at his doorstep shows character. On time, it shows character and shows you who you were, and you're saying, yeah, I ain't doing this. So, but you showed up.
Well, if I didn't show up there, they'd come drag me out in the middle of the night or something. I mean, I had no choice. I had to be there at that time with that, but I wasn't going to do that. And but you lose your fear. It's an interesting thing because I've talked to a lot of graduates from New York Military Academy from my era, some from a few years after, some from before. And the interesting thing is we all kind of share this characteristic that we're just not really living our lives in fear. And that's one thing I see about Donald Trump. That's one of the things that makes him so effective and capable, is that he doesn't live his life in fear. He's not afraid to act. He's not, a good example is when, all these presidents have promised to move the Israeli embassy to Jerusalem. And then when it comes time, they said, oh, don't do that because it could get the Palestinians angry, or it could get the Iranians angry. You don't want to do this. And so every single president that had ever promised that before Donald Trump cowered over fears. When you act out of fears or you act out of greed, those are the two things that tend to cause people to really mess up. Right. And that's not Donald Trump's problem. He doesn't have a problem with that. He does not operate out of fear. And that's why he was able to move the embassy, because nobody could scare him. Well,
that's the way he was. I've read the book, The Art of the Deal, several times. And I mean, I read it like a year or two ago. And, I always go back to the title page because you're like, this was written in the 80s. And I'm like, but he just said that, and it's like, this is the guy he is, and there's nobody like him. And that's why I think he's an incredible man, because of the fact that he is like that, and he stands up and he does things like that. So you're right,
Yes. So, and a good man, people, the characters form when they're young.
Right.
And I don't think they change all that much. The underlying person doesn't change all that much from when they're 17 years old. And here's a guy who was really liked by almost every cadet in the school. At the end of the year, I was on, the school newspaper, and we were the ones deciding who should be the most successful, who's the most popular. And we had a small body of people that we would vote on it. It wasn't open for the whole class to vote. And another friend of mine ended up as the most popular guy, named Celio Arriaga, really good guy. In fact, he was my best friend. but we still wanted to give something to Donald because he came in second, basically. Most people, you know, it was either one of the two was going to be the most liked person. And so we made him ladies' man. We had no ladies. The school was all boys. And there were no ladies' men.
Is it still all boys now, today? Or is
No,
it in,
no, no.
no?
No, now they've got 2 or 3 sexes, depending on
Oh,
you
yeah,
know, how a person identifies, I guess.
yeah.
I don't know. It's a different world, as I say. I don't know what they do there. I have a feeling that that's not tolerated.
So having been military myself and having worked at West Point, and I actually taught ROTC for a little while. One thing that always intrigued me and I was interested in is, so you went to the military academy, and so there would have been a normal progression for you to go from the military academy, the high school level, to go to ROTC at a college, or to West Point, which was over the hill there. What for you, like, what happened with going towards commissioning, and like, what did you decide? Because then you ended up in Canada, right? You went up to Ontario to go to school.
Right, yeah, I did. I was able to skip my first year of college. I ended up skipping my last year of college, so I only had 2 years of college, and I was in medical school by the time I was 20.
Uh-huh.
Which was something that I was able to do there that I wouldn't have been able to do in the US. But they took
Right.
a chance on me because high school there was 13 years. You know,
Yeah.
you had grade 13. And that grade 13 was brutal, but it was for those that were academically going on to college. You could get just a degree at the end of it, 12th grade, if you didn't want to go forward.
Right.
And they took a chance on me, and they let me skip grade 13, which really put me in a terrible position. I was used to top marks, and, you know, especially things like math and science, where I would, you know, get hundreds in my tests and so on. And all of a sudden I was doing terribly because I didn't have any of the prerequisites for any of the courses I was taking. But I caught up over the course of that year, and did well enough in the next year that I was able to get into medical school. My father was a
Right.
doctor, so I was supposed to be a doctor, but I really didn't want to be a doctor. And I kind of felt like I proved my point. I got in, but I really liked the idea of practicing law
Right.
for my life, but
But
more
what
than
happened with the commissioning
practicing
part?
medicine.
Like, was that ever on the table for you?
Well, I would have been I would have been a corporal if I went in after the 3 years I had at New York Military Academy. Donald had more years. He would have been a sergeant if he
Really?
would have gone to the service. Yeah,
Sergeant Trump, huh?
it would have been Sergeant Trump. For me, I don't know Donald's situation with that. I never talked to him about that, but I knew that I would be not killed by the enemy because I would be killed by my sergeant before the enemy had a chance with me, because I just knew that was not going to be a place where I was going to be able to do well. Now, if I would have gone on to West Point or whatever, that would have been a different story. But my goal was to become a doctor at that point. And so, you know, becoming an engineer at West Point wasn't really what I was
Right.
looking for.
The one thing about that I've paid attention to what the president does, and this is something subtle, but I think it ties back in with his military academy training, and it's something that I've seen. I watched Biden and Obama do, but Donald Trump did it exquisitely, and that's rendering the hand salute. I mean, Donald, you know, when he would render the hand salute, when he'd salute like the Marine at the bottom of the stairs on Marine One or something like that, you know, he executed it immaculately. And it was something that I watched and I picked up, and you know, now learning that he'd gone to New York Military Academy, now I know why.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Most people don't understand it or realize what it is, you know, the long way up, the short way down.
And for me, it actually shows
You go up.
it
then
shows
down.
a level of subtle respect that he does have for
It
the
is.
military.
Oh, yes. That salute is
Yeah,
more than a handshake, you
you
know.
know. So
Yeah.
so now, so what was the transition for you from? So you went to Ontario. You where did you go to law school? Down in New York?
No, first I went to law school in Ontario,
Oh, you did?
and I practiced there for a number of years, and then ultimately moved down to to Florida. My whole family was down in Florida.
Okay.
And so I moved down and went back to law school, got my American degree and, my JD, and
Right.
got on the Florida bar and
So
have been practicing law since.
when was that?
That down here.
How long you been a
Well,
lawyer?
oh, gosh, this month it's 50 years.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
To digress one more.
I tell people I'm only 54 years of age, but I've been 54 for 22 years.
I got you.
Yeah, I'm 4.5 months older than Donald. I mean, we're classmates, so obviously we
Right.
gotta be about it.
To digress for a second, because you're from Bronx, right?
Yes.
So Yankees or Mets?
It would have been Yankees.
Okay. Jets or
Yeah.
Giants?
I would guess, I would think Giants.
Okay. Islanders or Rangers?
Rangers.
Uh,
No, the Islanders came later. No.
Yeah, I
But when
got you.
I used to watch it when there was 6 teams,
Uh-huh.
when it was just when it was just Toronto, Montreal, New York, Boston, Detroit, and Chicago.
Did you?
And
Yeah, there's 6 teams. Yeah, the original 6. Yeah.
those 6 teams, and that was the best hockey in the world. I mean, now they spread it out into so many teams. Imagine if you took all those teams and took the very best players of all of those teams and just put it into 6 teams.
Yeah.
You'd have a different level of play.
Right. Did you ever become a Leafs fan? Living in
Yeah,
Ontario?
well, I
Oh,
kind of
Peter.
like the Leafs.
What?
What can I tell you? Now I'm too busy to watch sports.
My wife is Canadian, and my brother-in-law is a big Leafs fan. And I was born in 2 days before the Leafs won their last cup back in 1967. So even though I was 2 days old, I always bust my brother-in-law's chops about at least I was alive for the last Leafs Cup, even though I was 2 days old. So, but I being from New York and stuff, we know how important sports are in New York, and so I was just interested in seeing how who you rooted for and stuff like that, and yeah, you are, it's like you grew up in the era before the Jets came into fruition. The Islanders came about and the Mets. So yeah,
Right.
that's usually why you find folks like you that are Yankees, Giants, and Ranger fans, because I mean the Rangers are going to be 100 years old here soon. So do you root for teams down in Florida?
I'm so busy
Gotcha.
working at law. I mean, this
Right.
is to me, it's not a job, it's a vocation.
Right.
And and we have an expanding firm.
The
that's
Legal Brains,
doing-
right? Legal Brains.
Legalbrains.com. Yes, that's
Yeah.
our domain.
Gotcha.
So, yeah,
So
I mean, if you're gonna have a lawyer, you want one with legal brains.
yes. So how far do you live from or work from where Donald is?
Oh, I'm about a half an hour south of him
Okay.
on 995.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
In Deerfield Beach. It's kind of halfway between the Fort Lauderdale court and the West Palm Beach court.
Gotcha. So now let's you guys filed a lawsuit yesterday. So how did you connect back up with Donald from being his lawyer? How did that all come about? Because since yesterday, when your publicist first got in touch with me, how did you get put in place? Like since yesterday, being from New York, I was talking to my friends, everybody automatically defaults to the mayor, Rudy Giuliani. So, but how did you get involved with Donald in this lawsuit?
I want you to understand this in the right context, but there's a love, okay? If you went out and met up with somebody who you were very close to in high school, and whatever it was that you were meeting for, whether it was to play around a golf or whether it was to just talk about doing some kind of a business together, whatever it is, there would be a certain feeling between you that would be a healthy I call it love, but you know what I'm talking about. You've known somebody
Respect.
for a long time. Yeah, and you like them for all those years ago. They never let you down. They never did anything, to even
Adoration.
hurt your feelings. Well, it's just there's a difference. You know what they say. I say that it takes a long time to make an old friend,
Yeah.
and you don't know anybody till you live with them. And here we live together, so we really knew who we were, and we both figured that we seem to be the same people that we were back then. So there's a certain good feeling between us, but that never caused him to hire me. And I always wondered why. We talk. He'd say, "Look, Peter, it looks like you're doing well, and you and I are doing all right now, but the country doesn't look like it's doing so well." I mean, we've had those kinds of conversations, but still, he never hired me to be his lawyer. And then, just as a matter of coincidence, Alina Haber had dinner in a dinner party where she sat next to my daughter, who was a judge. And the two of them just got along so well that Alina asked her, said, "Would you consider, we need local counsel here in Florida, would you consider being local counsel?" My daughter said, "Well, it really wouldn't work so well. I'd be recused from every judge because we're friends." And so I don't really practice law. I do mediation, but my father might be of interest to you. And then that interested Alina. And after that, she found out that I knew Donald from before and that I wrote the book and so on. And so that really kind of made me look like a good prospect. And we hit it off. And then I spent some more time with Donald and Alina. It was supposed to be for 20 minutes. We talked for an hour and a half about all kinds of wonderful things. Never about the past, but just what's going on in the country, what's going on in the world, what needs to be done. And that's when I got hired, and that was the end of December. So I've been working on this complaint that got filed yesterday ever since, which is amazing when you think about it, because people in my office have been working on this thing, but not a word got breathed. Nobody knew it was coming.
Yeah, I know. It was a big surprise.
Yeah, for that period of time to have a number of people know it, but I've got wonderful people in my office, and they know how to keep things to themselves.
So
we were able to
So
pull that off.
looking at the lawsuit, it's like, here it is on my phone, you look, I mean, that's all the defendants there, and it's like Hillary, the DNC, Sussman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, it's just a whole list of names. That's a and like, how do all these players, they're from all over the place. So how do they all interconnect? It's amazing when the names are on this list.
Right. There's 28 defendants.
Wow.
And yes. And obviously some of them are well known, like Hillary Clinton, others not quite as well known, like Danchenko.
Yeah, Igor Danchenko,
yeah. But basically, if you think of it, all stems from Hillary Clinton. It all goes right up to Hillary Clinton. She is the thrust behind it. And when you think about what happened, I mean, it's just so unthinkable. It's hard to even understand. I mean, why in the world would somebody come up with this great idea? I got a great idea. Let's make believe that Donald Trump has a private relationship with Putin. Let's say that there's collusion between the Russian government and Donald Trump. Let's manufacture proof of this. Let's make sure that proof gets published. Let's get that proof to the authorities so they can begin an investigation. And then when the authorities don't really take it over and believe it, then they say, well, let's then get into their computers and make believe they're sending emails back and forth between one of the Russian banks, the Alpha Bank, and Donald Trump's organization, so that we can then take that to the authorities, the FBI, and show them that this is happening. Then let's propagate it. Let's begin an investigation. Let's make sure that people start wiretapping and watching them as they would under a FISA warrant. So we have to have it as a foreign government. It can't be some craziness with Epstein or something else that could be domestic. It's got to be with a foreign government so that the FISA warrants can come into play. I mean, who would even come up with this scheme? Why
I mean,
would anybody do this?
This would be a
But this is what
far-fetched
they
story
did.
for the TV show like 24, you know?
Yeah, it's less believable. I mean,
Yeah.
you almost have to have a suspension of disbelief in order to be able to grasp what this case is about. You know, when I was practicing law in Toronto, I had a client come to me, and he told me that he was being questioned by 2 police officers, and another guy came into the room, another police officer in a bunny costume, a big guy in a big bunny costume with a big fish in his hand. And he said he beat the living crap out of me with that fish, that dead fish. And I thought the guy was crazy. I was wondering, you know, what's going on? He seemed to be all right, but he insisted on this as being true. But I knew I wouldn't be able to convince a judge or anybody that this had happened, because nobody does things like this. Nobody does things off the wall. And then sure enough, I'm in court, I'm talking to one of my friends, another defense attorney from another firm. And he starts telling me about a client of his who said that he had this guy dressed up in a bunny costume that beat the hell out of him with a dead fish. So they were, it turned out that because lawyers talk to each other, we found out that they were doing that. So, who would ever think that somebody would do
Right.
something crazy like this? But this is what Hillary Clinton did. She was so far above the law in terms of what she didn't have to even concern herself with the illegalities and the criminality of what she was doing. It's just beyond normal belief.
So
But it
without
happened, and we can prove it.
so without going across any of the legal lines that you can cross, I mean, this document is 108 pages long. What's the general gist of it?
Well, basically, what I was just saying, that this fantasy that Donald Trump was involved, included with the Russian government. I mean, it's all been debunked now. But where did that come from? It came from Hillary Clinton, who basically had taken over the DNC by contract, because they're putting their money into the DNC, but they ended up with control. They had control of all the funds. They got control over the people that were going to be running it, et cetera, et cetera. So they were in control of the DNC. DNC and the Clinton campaign were one and the same, under the same leadership. And both the DNC and Hillary Clinton both hired Michael Sussman from the Perkins Coie law firm, figuring that she would be able to hide all of this nefarious activity behind attorney-client privilege. So that's where then she had the law firm. These lawyers, I mean, Michael Sussman, he's already indicted for, not for what he did, but for lying to the FBI. But he was instrumental with that, with his partner, Elias. These people basically then hired a company called Fusion GPS, who dealt with a fellow named Danchenko, who made up a lot of this nonsense that he was getting fed to him through a really close friend, a long-term backer named Dolan, Charles Dolan, who actually was feeding all this information about the hotel that Trump supposedly stayed at, where Trump never stayed, where Trump was having a salacious sexual thing going on, which never happened. Anyway, he's the one that was feeding it all to Danchenko, and Danchenko's then giving it all to Steele. And Steele was hired with his company to make up these dossiers of all this fake information. And then they took these dossiers, they went back up to Sussman. Sussman goes to the FBI and says, look, I've got this dossier, look at what Trump is doing. And he also tells them he doesn't have a client, that he's just there on his own as a good citizen. That's where he messed up in terms of why he's charged with criminal offense, because that was a lie to the FBI. And that's what he's charged with. That's the indictment. But really
Right.
what he was doing was attempting to get he got the FBI involved to get the whole investigation going. They got another person that worked for GPS. GPS hired a lady named Nellie Orr. Nellie Orr is married to Bruce Orr. Bruce Orr is in the Department of Justice. And she used to be in the Department of Justice, so she knows how it all works, to get them biting on the dossier, to be able to get these FISA warrants and get an investigation of Carter Page, who worked with Donald Trump and his organization, so that then they were able to expand that and get wiretaps, not just from Carter Page, but everyone that he spoke to, and then everyone that those people spoke to. So it was a web that was cast over the whole Trump organization in terms of what eavesdropping they were doing. It was, I mean, how can a political organization, a political group, do such a thing? And of course, Michael Sussman realized that if he would have told them the truth, that these things stem from a political party, from Hillary Clinton, that the FBI and the Department of Justice wouldn't have been interested in it in the same way. They would have understood it was bunk. So, and they would have investigated it differently. So that's why what he did was so wrong. And Danchenko is also charged at this point. So we're seeing that, you know, these things are coming out, you know, the truth will out in time, and it's coming out in time for us to be able to get the record straight in terms of the civil suit as well. But, you know, you're asking where are all these parts, and, you know, how does it all move? And as I say, if you think of Hillary Clinton as the eye of the octopus, the one that conjured up this whole thing, and then each of the 8 arms of the octopus really had different kinds of functions. So then it also boils down into what was the effects of Lisa Page and Strzok, the lovebirds. You know what I'm talking about, I think, if you've been following this stuff. I mean, look at these emails or texts rather that were between the two of them, where they talk about an insurance policy. So what is that insurance policy? What do they mean by an insurance policy? Well, you know, there's George Bernard Shaw, you know, the guy that gave us, you know, Youth is Wasted on the Young. You know.
Yes.
He was a playwright many years ago. Young people don't know who he is anymore, but, you know, he was before my time too. But, you know, the fact is that he's kind of known for certain things that he said. And one thing that he said once was, he said, the punishment of a liar is not in the least that he cannot be believed, but rather that he cannot believe others. Why? Because he's looking at the world through his own prism. He knows how he lies. He figures everybody's like he is. So you get people like this Strzok and Page and so on. They think everybody's like they are. So if they can set Donald Trump up, so he's going to be the subject of an investigation by the FBI or by special counsel or however, then they're going to find all the criminality. They're going to find all the crimes that he committed, right? Isn't that what somebody who commits crimes would think?
Right.
That everybody must do the same thing. No, there's some people that are honest on this planet, and Donald Trump is obviously one of them, because look what he went through. He went through 2 years of the Mueller investigation and a year of investigation before that, where they were, you know, the Mueller investigation, they knew there was no Russian collusion because there was no evidence of any. And if they looked at it at all, they saw that everything was made up from a bunch of nonsense. So they weren't looking for Russian collusion. They were looking for anything and everything. They wanted if they could find him spitting in the subway, they would have nailed him for that. But they couldn't find anything. All these years, all these millions and millions of dollars that got spent investigating Donald Trump, and they couldn't find a thing. How many people can actually pass that kind of a test in terms of honesty and decency?
And they just dropped that big lawsuit against them. The New York did, right? The one that they were
Because they
going to, and
can't
that,
find anything. You know,
right?
and they sure this one that left, he can make believe that there's something, but he doesn't have anything there either. There's nothing. Because for one thing, you know, you went to you've had your experiences in the military. Well, you know, New York Military Academy, we had something called an honor code. The cadet
Right.
shall not lie,
Lie,
cheat, or
cheat, or
steal from
steal.
another cadet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Or tolerate
we
those that
live
do.
that.
Or tolerate
What's
those
that?
that do. Or tolerate those that do.
Or tolerate those that do. Donald Trump never had a problem with honesty. I lived with the man. He's an honest, decent person. He never lied about anything in all the time I've known him. And so, you know, he passed the test, and then he became a billionaire. And you know, he didn't have to steal $1 million from somebody or lie to get it or whatever, because he made his money. He found his way of doing it. He went to the Commodore Hotel. He got that and
Yeah.
reworked it at the Plaza, it's called now. And he realized I could make hundreds of millions of dollars in one transaction.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And that's what he did.
Right. And
So
if you,
he didn't have to have a life of crime, not like the Clintons apparently may have. I don't know what their past is, but I know that they came up with this harebrained idea, which caused a tremendous amount of harm. So that's where this lawsuit is here to redress that entire episode of what occurred, with the hope that when they get punished sufficiently, it'll deter others from engaging in such actions.
let me ask you this. We were talking a little bit before when we first started. You know, we've been, you know, we're talking about how fun it was going to rallies and chanting "lock her up, lock her up." From your standpoint and your opinion as a lawyer, and with some intricate knowledge and background of this, of, you know, unique knowledge of some of this stuff, what is your opinion as a lawyer? It's like, you know, why didn't anything follow through with the DOJ and stuff like that, you know, and in that regard, you know?
Well, the president doesn't run the DOJ. You know, that's probably the one part of his administration that he has the least to do with. You know, you may remember Janet Reno with Bill Clinton when they were investigating him, and Janet Reno said, "No, don't come near me with any of that." That was one of the most scary and difficult parts of Clinton's administration, was that he picked the wrong attorney general because she wasn't ready to play ball with him. And that's what a good attorney general will do, is keep the department independent from the politics. And I mean, I'm not saying what's going on now. Obviously, attorney generals are going to be people that have similar politics to the president's. But also, when you think about it in terms of Hillary Clinton, much of what we know now, we didn't know then. And in fact, that's part of the reason we're able to go ahead with some of the actions we're going ahead with, because there's something called a discovery rule. So the statute of limitations comes into play from the time you knew or should have known of certain activity.
Right.
And so that's why the RICO counts and so on are there for Donald Trump to bring, because much of this was unearthed very recently by Durham.
The one thing I always find is that Donald always tends to be right when he states some things, you know, he just, in the long run, it always comes out to be true.
I know. And there were times, I remember when he was running in 2016, and I'd say to myself, "Oh, Donald, why did you do that? Why did you say that?" And 2 days later, I realized he's dead right, right on.
Right.
And, you know, it's just that he has the guts to be able to say what he's thinking. And there it goes again, back to New York Military Academy, where we learn not to be afraid. And that's a hard lesson. That's not something you learn because you read in a book. I mean, you got to be facing very scary situations and learn how to deal with
for months and years at a time.
And then somehow you're just not afraid
For
the rest of our lives.
So where do you see, where's this all gonna go towards? I mean, it just got filed yesterday. Like, what's gonna happen next, and how long is this gonna take? And,
Okay. I have to tell you, my immediate boss in this whole deal, the one I work for, and she doesn't like it when I say I work for her because she sees us, and she's right, that we really work together. I work with Alina Haba. She is a smart cookie, a good lawyer. She knows what she wants and when she wants it. And I love working with her because everything that comes out of her is sensible and smart. Sometimes it's demanding, but if it's too demanding and you don't quite do exactly everything you need to do because the time period wasn't quite enough, she's very understanding. In fact, Donald was lucky to have her as his chief lawyer there, and I definitely love working with her. And this was written by her firm and mine. It went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth over 2 months.
Like what's the time frame moving forward? Like, how long is this gonna last? And, I mean, is this gonna be weeks, months, years?
Federal court moves quickly. With 24 defendants and the case being as complex as it is, I can understand that the scheduling, what you do in federal court is the lawyers get together, they make a scheduling report, and then they have a scheduling order that comes down from the judge, usually approving of the report. So we'll have so long to get the discovery done, which is depositions. We're able to ask the other side questions, interrogatories. We can ask them for documents, requests for production, requests for admission. So that's basically what happens in the discovery phase. And then after that, then there's motions for summary judgment, motions to dismiss. Well, in fact, motions to dismiss come even earlier. So if there's a defendant who says, well, as a matter of law, you didn't plead enough, let's say we didn't have a fraud count, but if we had a fraud count and we didn't say when the fraud occurred, but we put down everything about it, but we just forgot to put in when. So that's the element that needs to be included. So then the case would get dismissed with a right for us to amend and put that in. So, but let's just say that we alleged fraud and nobody ever told a lie, and we never could allege that there was a lie. We didn't, as I say, we didn't base this case on fraud, but nevertheless, there were a lot of lies in this case. But let's just say that that were the case. Well, then we wouldn't even be able to fix it. So then it would be a dismissal with prejudice. So, this is what they're going to go after at first. They're going to do what they can to get dismissals. Then we're going to get into, then they're going to file an answer. And once their answer is there, then we're going to have a scheduling report. And then after that's done, then the motions to dismiss and other determinative motions are going to be heard. And that could determine the case. Depending on what we find in discovery, what we don't find. And then after that, it's trial. And the thing about federal court is they don't allow cameras in, which is unfortunate because this would be a really good one to have televised.
Right.
But that's not going to happen. And we've got Judge Middlebrooks, who is actually a Clinton appointee. So now we're suing the wife of the person that appointed him. But Judge Middlebrooks is a pretty fair guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know whether my client feels safe. My experiences with Judge Middlebrooks have been kind of exemplary.
The case is based in Florida or New York?
The Southern District of Florida.
Okay.
In the federal court.
Okay.
And it's here because the injurious falsehoods that were committed in Florida. They were committed in all 50 states. And so that means that it's where the tort occurred or where the defendant lives. And at the same time, we have defendants that are Florida citizens of the state of Florida, such as Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who had a major part to play in this whole episode. So there's more than one reason that we should be able to bring this and keep it in the state of Florida.
This is a civil lawsuit. So what, in a civil lawsuit, what kind of relief can you expect to come out of a civil lawsuit? And then does that lead into a criminal lawsuit?
Okay.
From a general standpoint.
It's funny because I think the criminal suits, you're calling it a criminal suit, but the criminal prosecutions have led to the civil case. Just the opposite, because now we know, now we can see, now we've got the evidence as to what Michael Sussman was doing. These are the lawyers that work for Perkins Coie, who basically masterminded with Hillary Clinton and executed her plan. And so, these are the dirty lawyers,
right,
who did the dirty deeds and had other people do the dirty deeds, depending on which deeds they were. I mean, some they did themselves, some they enlisted other help. But this is what it is. And for this, they got paid handsomely. But you see, that's the thing about lawyers. They did this, they figured that they would avoid being caught because lawyers have attorney-client privilege. They can't give the information up. They can't tell the information. They can't be asked the information even by a judge because it's attorney-client privilege. So therefore, you can have your lawyers do all kinds of things, but they can't. Attorney-client privilege doesn't apply when your lawyer is doing something that's criminal or when your lawyer is doing something that's fraudulent. You cannot then have something like this occurs. So the Clintons made a big mistake when they thought that that would be the case. Also, they made a big mistake by having lawyers. They should have just gone to professional criminals who know how to keep their mouths shut. But instead, they went through to lawyers and asked those lawyers to be criminals. But lawyers do something that criminals don't normally do. These criminals in lawyers' suits, they did do what lawyers do, which is they needed to be paid for their time. So they made time slips. And they kept a record of all of the secret meetings and all of the things that they were doing. So going to a lawyer turns out not to be the smartest thing in the world because they bill for their work and those bills have all of this nefarious stuff in it. I mean, sometimes it just says, attended a meeting on secret project, what?
Right.
We all know what that is.
Like from the Little Rascals, super secret, of the heist, remember the Little Rascals? Yeah, I knew you'd like that, huh?
Well, the Little Rascals, Alfalfa and whatever, if that were playing now, it would be one of those things that would be erased.
Right.
Because it's derogatory.
Yeah.
And I was brought up watching it, and we didn't turn it into racist.
Yeah, wasn't it on Channel 11? It was on WPIX when we were kids,
Well, when I was a kid, we didn't have it. We only had the three. We had ABC, NBC, and CBS.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then eventually got, UHF channels, 27 and 42 or something like that. And then when cable came, then it changed everything.
What do you think now? I find it interesting that the stuff that's going on with Russia right now and what's going on over there right now, and now we have this lawsuit coming out. Is there any, in your opinion, like do these two things have anything to do with each other, in your opinion?
No.
Or there's no connection at all?
Well, there's a connection in a sense because there's the Democrat mentality that it's okay to do whatever you want to do to hurt people or whatever, and at the same time, a certain lack of integrity and a certain lack of guts. I mean, I can tell you this, I can't tell you for a fact because, it's hypothetical, but if Donald Trump was still in office, we wouldn't be seeing any war with the Ukraine. We didn't see even a hint of it while Donald Trump was in office. Nobody was talking about it. Putin wasn't warning the Ukraine.
There were no wars. There was really minimal military deaths. Rocket Man didn't shoot anything. I mean, because Donald ruled with an iron fist and nobody wanted to mess with him,
Nobody would mess with him. And frankly, he's told me certain things that he told Putin and things that he told to Xi. And I got to tell you, you didn't mess with the United States of America because we have the power. And we had the power, especially then. I know China's been catching up more than Russia, but I know they're catching up, but they're still not there. And what we have are these people that have the same mentality. Oh, I don't want to hurt people's feelings. They don't understand that it's real evil. They don't open the borders. They're all decent people. Let them come in. Tell me something. If you're offering free medical care to people that sneak into the country, then what kind of a person that has a tumor in Nicaragua that doesn't have the money to treat it down there isn't going to come to America to get free medical service to basically save his life?
Right.
I mean, who's going to stay down there at all if you can come here? That's why we're seeing more and more and more and more people that are coming. And where it's going to end up, God knows. But I mean, it used to be considered insanity that you would say, let's have open borders. But these people, they get these ideas that it's all right. And they don't see harm. They don't see evil. They don't see anything. Everybody's a person. Let's have feelings for them. And, we're so weak now. They say that hard times make strong men, and strong men make easy times, and easy times make weak men, and weak men make hard times. And right now, you were military in the days that you had to be a man to be a military, or, I'm not nothing against women either, but you know what I'm talking about. You had to be somebody that could stand up.
Right.
You had to be somebody, you were somebody, not just somebody getting in there for, and I mean, I think that the leaders of our military now are more concerned with the woke attitudes, making sure everybody has good feelings, I mean, when imagine going to college and having a safe zone that nobody can say anything that would hurt your feelings in there. I mean, this is incredible. This is a weak country that we have to kowtow to that kind of nonsense. And that's because the strong men are older, like I am. But you see these young people come up. You see young fathers, the way they deal with their kids. They're just not strong men. And
I don't know.
as a
It sounds
result,
something auspiciously, something like "Make America Great Again."
That's probably too bad nobody used that.
I know, huh?
Yeah.
Is there anything that we can do, as the supporters of Donald, and is there anything that we can do to help?
Yes. Yeah. If you have any footage of what happened on September 6th, January 6th, or you've got, if you've got video showing the people that were telling people to go into the Capitol, because those weren't Trump people.
Well, it's funny you should bring that up.
Those lines.
It's funny you should bring that up, because when I was at CPAC, okay, I got in a face-to-face with Jim Acosta, okay, because I was on the ground of the Capitol building on January 6th. We were down at the monument where Donald was giving the speech. We we left North Carolina at midnight that night because we were going there to stand in front of the Capitol building to use my God-given rights by the Constitution to redress our government because we didn't believe that the Electoral College and that election was truthful. We went there for that reason. Donald Trump never told me to go there. No way. I went there because it was my right as a citizen. Okay. We were down there at the monument, and Donald gave his speech, and then we had gone down to the Capitol building because they were getting ready to have that vote. Okay. The thing that when I got into a head-to-head with Jim Acosta was, I asked him, I said, why didn't you cover the fact that people were singing the Star Spangled Banner? Why didn't you cover the fact that people were saying the Pledge of Allegiance and singing God Bless America? Why didn't you cover that? And, you know, and he's like, oh, you were there. And I was like, you were there? And I was like, yeah, I was there. And then he started questioning. He's like, do you believe that Donald Trump won the election? I was like, yes, I do believe that. I believe that Donald Trump won the election. And then when I asked him, I'm like, do you believe that Joe Biden got 80 million votes more than Obama? And that's when he kind of ended the interview, when I started pushing back. But you're exactly right that they don't promote what really happened. There was a small amount of people, okay, that were there, but they don't cover the vast amount of people that went there because they were executing their constitutional rights.
If anyone has any information, any videos or anything that can help us in regard to that, please go to my email, PT, my initials, Piano Tango, pt@legalbrains.com, and send me what you've got.
Okay.
Let me know who you are, and you might be a big help to us, maybe more than you know. We need what we can get.
Is there any fundraising going on? Is that allowed to happen?
I'm not involved in any.
Okay.
I think that there are some organizations that do collect some money for some of
Okay.
these things, and I'm working with some people that are wonderful human beings that are already way ahead of me in terms of finding the evidence regarding the election fraud and regarding what really happened on January 6th. But what I'm really looking for is January 6th.
Okay.
I'm looking for what happened. Okay, because we know that Donald Trump didn't send anybody into the Capitol. We know that. He did not participate in any kind of an insurrection. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to attempt to prove that Donald Trump was involved in an insurrection so that he would be banned from running for office in the federal government according to the 14th Amendment. And that's where we have a lot more work to do. What we're dealing with here in this complaint has to do with the dirty deeds that were done, the Watergate that was done by Hillary Clinton, which is far worse. I mean, the burglars that went into Watergate, they didn't plant false stories. You know, they were just spying on what they were doing. With Hillary Clinton, that was just starters spying on what they were doing. So that's a whole different bag of tricks.
Is there,
Dirty, disgusting.
as we close out, is there anything else you want to mention?
No, I think the future is going to unfold one way or the other. But I will tell you this. I am absolutely convinced that we have a good chance of keeping this country, keeping the democracy. I know it's gone right now, but we have a good chance of getting it back. So let's just put everything we have into 2022. Let's put everything we have into 2024, because that's when we've got to get it back, or it's going to be gone.
So, all right. Well, it was nice spending about just over an hour with you. So I appreciate your time, and good luck with the lawsuit, and good luck with the book. It's such a wonderful book. You know, it's an easy read.
Yes,
too.
yes.
It's an easy read. It's a thin book, you know, and it's, you know, so it's easy, and I like the way it's broken down into little bits and pieces, so you can read little parts of it here and there. So, you know, so I like that. So it's a very easy read. So But thank you.
If you don't laugh out loud at least once, I'll buy it back from you. Okay.
Okay.
It's a fun book. So by all means, please get it. It's available on Amazon.
Okay.
What makes Trump tick? Okay.